No, we just need the most clickbaity title at all. Like, I was like, I almost got fired, and then just have you like be really
angry.
Hey, we need to talk about these audits.
Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. In today's video, I want to talk about the best ideas that I gathered from this book, Power versus Force. I was inspired to talk about this book actually because I was in my office's elevator, and on the elevator there's this thing called the mood chart, which asks the employee to see how they're feeling from a scale of just being really depressed to the top being grateful. It made me remember this book, Power versus Force. I had first read this book because of a YouTube channel called Valuetainment. Patrick Bet-David, one of the hosts on that channel, is kind of one of my inspirations, and he said that this was one of the most important books that he had read in his life. And so I checked it out, and I was surprised by how esoteric it was. I often feel uncomfortable with the degree to which I'm talking about esoteric knowledge, because I do worry, on occasion I worry that, what if this isn't real, and what if I'm just touting fake stuff when I talk about the law of attraction? No matter how much circular scientific evidence we can find about it, there is a degree of faith, I think, that's required to believe in something like the law of attraction, or believe that your vibration is a real thing. But then when I listen to successful people such as Patrick Bet-David talk about how these texts have been really instrumental in their life, I find it really inspiring. And so in this video, it's going to be slightly out of order, but I'm going to read some of the best ideas that I encountered from this book, Power versus Force, which is kind of like a very tactical, emotion-focused law of attraction book. What I basically could discern from it, and what tactical actions that I feel I can start to take in my life as a result of reading this book. So Power versus Force, it basically talks about calibration levels of human consciousness that are an indicator for how much goodness you are attracting into your life, or what lack of goodness you might be attracting into your life because of your vibrational level right now. And the book, one of the most profound things that the book gives is like this amazing chart that shows you different levels, and the author attributes a number to each level. And evidently this chart works on a logarithmic scale, which means to say that getting higher and higher is actually like a magnitude of more power. I'm just going to read from the book so that you can get a better sense of what I'm talking about. So he says, great works of art, music, and architecture calibrate between 600 and 700, and they can transport us temporarily to higher levels of consciousness, and they're universally recognized as inspirational and timeless. Immediately when I read this, I resonated so strongly with it because, as many of you may know, I'm an actor and an aspiring film and TV actor. And there is a sort of vibe transference that happens when an actor is doing a really good job and doing a really amazing job, like portraying the character. You sort of start to think like that character. You start to think like the character in that universe. It's something I call like movie vibe transference. This actually phenomena also exists in books. It's called a character hangover, where after you read a book for a while, you basically start to think like the characters in that book's world. And so immediately when I read this, that great works of art are universally recognized as inspirational and timeless, they transport you to the energy of that world. I think occasionally when Saraswati is on my lips and I'm really feeling the words that I'm speaking in these YouTube videos, I feel as if hopefully I'm doing a sort of vibe transference. The best that is within me is transferring onto the viewer. It doesn't happen every time, of course, because sometimes I'm caught up with my own machinations, but there is a degree of vibe transference, and that immediately hooked me at the start of this book, Power versus Force. Alright, let's keep reading. He talks about the social distribution of consciousness levels. The author says, the 400s are the level of the awakening of the intellect, the locus of true literacy, higher education, the professional class, executives and scientists. The home, devoid of reading materials at the lower levels, now exhibits magazines, periodicals, and full bookcases. There is an interest in educational broadcast channels on TV and a more sophisticated political awareness. Great communication adeptness, intellectual preoccupation, and artistic creativity are common. Recreational activities take on the form of chess, travel, theater, and concerts. Civic enterprises intended to enhance the social milieu receive serious attention. Supreme Court justices, presidents, statesmen, inventors, and leaders of industry occupy this general range, the range of the 400s. Okay, here is a really interesting thing that happened to me once I started this YouTube channel, once I started meditating consistently, once I started really consistently enacting some of the powerful disciplines that we've talked about on this channel. I sort of lost my interest in general television, like juicy, fun television. You know, I used to watch a lot of violent TV, you know, Narcos, Breaking Bad, House of Cards, and certainly those are all bingeable, really well done content. But I sort of found myself losing an interest in violent, sensationalized media, and I became much more interested in the assertion of knowledge. I think this is something that meditation does to you. You sort of end up turning your personality around, and it sort of freaked me out because I wanna act on film. So the fact that I'm losing my love for film a little bit, that sort of scared me. But ultimately what I decided was I'm losing my interest in sort of violent, sensationalized media and building up more and more appreciation, more and more love for the kind of storytelling that enables personal development, the kind of story that invigorates and exhilarates the individual and sort of wrestles with the machinations of life and helps the individual rise above it. So I sort of felt this transformation happening within me once I became a consistent meditator and once I consistently enacted some of these powerful disciplines in my life. And once again, it's like the author suggests that your interests change as you rise up the vibrational ranks. You end up preoccupying sort of a higher level of thinking. A high state is any state of consciousness above one's customary level of awareness. Therefore, to a person who lives in fear, moving up to courage is a high. To people who live in hopeless apathy, anger is a high. Ours is a society that idealizes the pleasureless, hard work, stoicism, self-sacrifice, restraint, and tends to condemn pleasure in most of its simpler forms, frequently even declaring them to be illegal. I'm often very guilty of this because I grew up in an immigrant family. My dad rose up to his level of power and progress in society through sheer hard work, and it's something he always, beat against me, was like, you should be working really, really hard. And I struggled with this because oftentimes the best results that came into my life wasn't a result of hard work. It was a result of like free-flowing work and actually having a sense of enjoyment about it. A great sage, I was with my parents at like a religious retreat several years ago, and someone asked that sage, how do I know that my son is studying well? How do I know that he's going to do well in his classes? And the sage said, if you are enjoying the studying process, then you can be rest assured that you will do really well on that exam. If you're enjoying that period of like learning, even the struggle of that learning. And that's something that I think I need to work more and more on, is to engage in more pleasure. Esther Hicks in her Law of Attraction books, and it's funny I'm talking about her now because I used to kind of harp on her, but I'm sort of changing my perspective on all this. Esther Hicks says one of the most important things you can do from a Law of Attraction perspective is to feel good. Feeling good is among the more important things you can do to raise yourself up to a high vibration. And so chasing pleasure that comes from healthy sources. Obviously, you don't want to give into compulsions, but chasing pleasure from sources that are healthy, vital, empowering, that's a really good way to kind of start to activate the law of attraction a little bit. Success comes as the automatic consequence of aligning one's life with high power energy patterns. Why is true success so relatively effortless? I just talked about this. It might be likened to the magnetic field created by an electric current running through a wire. The higher the power of the current, the greater the magnetic field that it generates. And the magnetic field itself then influences everything in its presence. There are very few at the top. The world of the mediocre, however, is one of intense competition, and the bottom of the pyramid is crowded. Arnold Schwarzenegger said the same thing. When people would ask Arnold Schwarzenegger, like, oh, what are you doing next? You're moving on from bodybuilding. He would simply say, I'm gonna become the #1 movie star in the world. #1 at the box office movie star. And he would just stare at them as if it's a completely matter-of-fact true. Like, people would be like, this is incredible, like, you have such a long last name, you have this overdeveloped body, you can barely speak English, you've got this thick Austrian accent, how can you end up saying this? And he said, it's actually more practical for me to say this because the top is less crowded. I'd rather aim for the top. Alright, here the author continues to speak on this kind of topic of vibe transference. He says, the energy of other people is magnetic. This is part of the philosophy of self-help groups such as Alcoholics Anonymous. They say, just bring the body to the meeting. If you merely expose yourself to the influence of higher patterns, they begin to rub off. The essence of what I learned in this book is really just being able to pay attention to how you're feeling. Pay attention to the vibrational level that you're at, and you can really just tell this through your emotions. It's like that mood elevator that's at my office. Just remind yourself, like, where am I on this scale? If you find yourself in a low zone, that's perfectly fine, but sometimes you can just ask yourself, like, what activities could I do? What could be done with me right now to get me to that next level? It could be just taking a nap. That's something that Esther Hicks recommends. If you're just feeling really angry or really sad, maybe you just need to take a nap, and then when you come out of that, you can try again. But maybe it could be affirmations, exercise, eating a really great meal, and inducing a bit of pleasure in your life, you know, like making sure that your efforts aren't purely stoic and pleasureless. There should be a degree of play, a degree of fun, a degree of like excitement for what's to come next. And I can tell you guys, for those of us who are willing to enact the powerful disciplines that we all know to be true, and willing to pay attention to our vibrational levels, pay attention to what we're feeling, what's coming is something truly, truly great. Greatness is coming. Cheers, guys. Thanks for bearing with me through this video, and I will talk to you very, very soon. Cheers.